Well, welcome everybody and happy Founders Day. My name is Ben Nicol and I currently serve as the Foundation's Chief Executive Officer. And I'm happy to be here on this very special occasion with some of my most favorite brothers and some folks that are very involved in philanthropy and community service. And today we've brought together these brothers for an opportunity for discussion around philanthropy in the sector to talk most importantly about volunteering and the impact that we can have. And so in the theme of the great joy of serving others, I went and found what was called in the 1920s and the 1930s, the freshman manual. Many of this may refer to this as the pledge manual, which was referred to in the 20s and 30s as the freshman manual. And now, of course, our new member program. And I thought to start us off, I would just take us back to our founding as they remembered it in that manual at that time. And it reads, 2 college students in a little town in the hills of Western Pennsylvania were nursing and watching their stricken fellow students while an epidemic of typhoid fever raged throughout the college. During the long night vigils, a new light dawned on their spiritual vision, and its rays shone deep into their souls, while the great joy of serving others came into their lives. And I thought just how apropos that was perhaps to the current environment that we all find ourselves in. And so with that as the introduction for the discussion and our time together, I'm really pleased to introduce Milt Thompson, who hails from our Ohio Beta chapter at Wittenberg University. And post his undergraduate experience, Milt graduated from Indiana University School of Law. And today he's an attorney who concentrates on sports and entertainment law, but is also very focused on consulting for entrepreneurs, nonprofit, and small businesses. He's an avid philanthropist and volunteer, and he's been recognized both locally and nationally for his contributions to the betterment of various communities. And so with that, I'm really pleased to welcome Milt to the conversation and the discussion. And Milt, we'll ask you to just share a little bit more about your professional and personal background.
Well, thank you, Ben. I'm delighted to be here with the other panelists, having read through their biographies. To be listed in their company is an extraordinary honor in itself. I'd like to think that my brotherhood of Phi Kappa Psi resounds through decades now. And that I believe that continuing to be in service is a critical part of who we are, DNA. You mentioned something about the history just a moment ago, and the one word that I caught was spiritual. And that must mean it underpins something that's more metaphysical than what it is we have contained within ourselves. So thus, our philanthropy needs to be outward or external. Meaning it does no good to hold on to power, it does no good to hold on to our own self-worth unless we can share it with others. And I think that's the Great Commission, notwithstanding your faith roots. But at least the faith that I have suggests that that's our big command, is to treat others as you do yourself. And to even treat them better, in fact, to give them more opportunities. So philanthropy and myself, I've been blessed beyond measure, had an unbelievable career. Not that there haven't been challenges, but I think that I've been prepared to meet those challenges, no matter where they've been. When I was representing the United States as general counsel for the Pan American Games via the Olympic Committee, and representing us in directly across the table from Fidel Castro and Revolutionary Palace in Havana, to be able to say the American way is the way we're going to go. Communism is not really what's that. I couldn't say it in those ways, but I had to say that in a euphemistic way to be sure that we were able to at least have some peace with respect to how all that was working. I've worked in the areas of international work and philanthropy. Before the pandemic, about a year ago, February, was in Kigali, Rwanda, assisting their development board to be able to have a sports tourism strategy, very much like what we've created here in Indianapolis, to have it become an economic tool and a driver for going forward, and have that be out all sub-Saharan Africa in combination with the NBA, that they're developing a facility there. It'll be a 10,000 seat facility relative to NBA in character. But and locally as well as nationally. Winning awards for philanthropy is never my intent, because I know where my ultimate rewards come. People often ask, why do you do so much and so many? And I always ask the question, is there more that I can do? So it's a difference of your perspective and how it is you frame up issues relative to that. So in the practice of law, I've represented pound for pound some of the better athletes in the world, and they've always turned in their secondary careers and make sure that they include helping others and philanthropy and not just collecting their wealth. I've been fortunate enough to be involved with organizations of trust. And as the founding creator of the Central Atlantic Community Foundation, with nearly 800 million in assets, by doing a merger that was not necessarily friendly, but one that created more value for all those that were involved, so that there could be more income from the larger parts of the corpus. That could be, as you well know, Ben, in the world of foundations and philanthropy, that you can give more to those who are in need. And being on maybe 7 foundation boards currently, and I'm technically retirement age. So hopefully I'm going to live the Phi Psi tradition of spiritualism that underpins what it is our choices. And I've been blessed with my career and need not, we were just talking earlier about having faces and what have you. Well, I've had 6 television shows and 12 radio shows. All the TV shows have been canceled for whatever reason, and the radio shows they want me to do more of. It must be my face for radio. And listening to some of the testimony today, without being political, but I was the regular on the Mike Pence television show back before he ran for Congress a second time, and then I took over his television show and turned it from a political leaning show into a much more of a public affairs show, which lasted for several years thereafter.
Well, thanks for that. Thanks for that introduction and some clarity around all the things that you've accomplished. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your thoughts on philanthropy and how folks can get more involved. I'm also really excited that today we're joined by Randall Summers, an initiate, importantly, a founding father of our Cal State Long Beach chapter at Cal Xi. Randall's been involved in marketing and production ever since college, and just a few short years ago, he started a marketing company that focuses on event production and digital advertising. And then importantly, he works for a nonprofit organization called Reach Out Worldwide, and it brings together first responders to disaster areas. And Randall's responsible for the organization's deployment of those teams who directly respond to those disasters. And then he also has his hands in managing the organization's fundraising and partnerships. And so Randall, we're really excited to have you as part of our discussion today. And I'd invite you to share a little bit more on your background in relation to your good work in the philanthropy sector.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. I got to mirror what Milt said. I'm pretty honored to be with you guys and be in this company, especially after reading some of your bios. I'm like, thinking, I feel like I'm about, 3 decades behind, but I don't think it's my fault. But yeah, so we, I got kind of started with the charity, kind of as a factor of the pandemic, if I'm being honest. Going into working with them was on an event situation where I was managing an event that was also a fundraiser for the charity as well. So there's always been a little bit of a play in that. And then, once live events just ceased to exist in the world, we started kind of focusing more on, well, how can we get creative with continuing the organization and continuing with doing deployments safely and continuing to, fundraise and continue partnerships. So it's definitely been a lot of, hopping here and hopping there and having to pivot quite a bit to, adhere to different things, different requirements and stuff. But it's been really exciting to, kind of see the continued support from people globally. Reach Out Worldwide was founded in 2010 by the late actor Paul Walker, and he, kind of spontaneously responded to the earthquake in Haiti that happened in 2010. And upon arrival, noticed that there was a lot of help that was needed, but nobody really organizing that help. And so we're on purpose, we're a small, agile team, independent. We go in, we try to get there within a day or so of a disaster happening worldwide, with skilled specialists. And so we'll drop down, instantly try to find some community leader, and help people that were affected directly. Whether that's something as small as a tree fell and now they can't get out of their driveway. They need to go to work, they need to go to the hospital, they need to go check in on their mother that's 2 cities away or something. We'll work to get that tree disposed of, and tarping homes and responding to all natural disasters. There's not a natural disaster that we don't have a skill set in responding to. So it's definitely a unique opportunity, and just being a part of this conversation kind of came naturally as well. So one of the tasks at hand is how do we respond to something in one day? We're in Southern California and Oregon, so we're primarily located on the West Coast. But if something, and just speaking nationally, if something happens in Florida or Alabama or the Northeast or something, or Texas, how do we respond to that quickly? So one of the ideas that I had was, well, Phi Kappa Psi is a national organization. Why don't we team up with them? And when something happens in an area, let's first research and see if there's a local chapter. And if they're interested and they can join, and let's get a bunch of young, able-bodied people to come help us right away. So we can send our small team and immediately have a huge presence on the ground. So another way that we do that is our national disaster relief partner is Lowe's Home Improvement. So we can step ground and pretty much anywhere in the country, right? And we can instantly go to Lowe's and go fill up an entire trailer, an entire truck full of supplies that they need, and just make a huge impact, with one truckload. Getting people tarps, getting people totes, hammers, shovels, all kinds of different things, generators. It was a unique opportunity to be asked to be a part of this. And upon reading all your guys' bios, I'm really excited to be here. And I think that this is going to be great to speak about. I think it's really motivating for the undergrads and even the alumni to understand that it is pretty easy to get involved once you kind of identify what you're interested in doing. And there's always going to be an organization out there that needs an extra hand.
Well, thanks, Randall, for that. I think that's a great segue to our final panelist, and I'm really excited to introduce a longtime Phi Psi volunteer, Brother Bill Good. And Bill calls our Iowa Beta chapter at Iowa State home. Bill's not only volunteered for the Iowa Beta House Corporation for 11 years, I believe, prior to the group's closure, but since the chapter's rechartering in, I believe it's 2007, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but you've served as chapter advisor for that group. Bill's a retired attorney, and I should mention that has himself received a number of awards for his volunteer service inside and outside of Phi Psi. And he's also led our Iowa State chapter to receive a number of awards, both within their campus, their community, and nationally. And so with that, Bill, I'm really excited, and thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you, and I'm too honored to be here. I can't say I joined many years ago Phi Psi because of the great joy of serving others. I sometimes joke with our new members that they probably had a scientific search for the best chapter to join. I didn't do that. I joined Phi Psi because my older brother was chapter president when I joined. And when he joined as a freshman, our older cousin was chapter president. So it was just a family fraternity, and that's what we Goods did. We joined Phi Psi. And I always, for about 4 years as an undergraduate, I thought that the F in fraternity stood for fun because we had a lot of fun. Well, anyway, fast forward, I was shocked, I guess would be the word. I don't know, extremely disappointed when my chapter in about 1999 went out of business. And so I got re-involved a few years later. And, my thought was, we somehow have to build this thing back differently. And one of those things, we kind of came up with a list of best practices, but one of those best practices was to get back to why FISI was started in the first place, and it had to do with service. And luckily, the guys that we got in those initial years, they really bought into that. They liked the story of our founding, and so service to others is always a big deal. And it's pretty well much continued to be a big deal. Our chapter takes pride in racking up those service hours and doing those different events. And when I got re-involved with FISI, my interest was in, as I say, getting my hands dirty with the students. I didn't want to sit on any boards. I didn't want to sit, and contemplate. I wanted to talk to students on a regular basis, and so that's kind of my story as to how I got re-involved, and one of my motivations for staying involved today.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Bill, for being with us. Milt, you had mentioned and commented on the spiritual nature of that kind of initial reading that I did on why our founders started the fraternity. I think folks would be interested to know, from your perspective, what ignited your passion for service, and then how do you ignite that passion in others?
Well, clearly for me, it was my mother ignited the passion for that. Very pious woman, unfortunately died when I was 17 years old, before matriculating onto college on Valentine's Day. I was a lost sheep, you might imagine, at that age, and she had recommended, actually from her dying bed, that the little quote unquote Christian school in Ohio that you and your dad had visited, and that ended up being a place where I went, other than some other places which I had been admitted for athletics scholarships and for academics at Harvard and Yale and several of the other Ivy Leagues, but ended up at Wittenberg University, which was a mother wit, which truly meant a great deal to me. And how I pass that forward is maybe through an example better than actual sentiments and feelings, and just listen to Bill talk about the love for the chapter and the things that he had there that got taken away from them. Well, we had a similar situation at Wittenberg University, where our FISI chapter got removed from the campus for a 5-year period of time. It was gut wrenching, not only for me, but for some of the brothers who lived closer to the area. And we have a golf outing every year, just us, and we do around. But to add insult to injury, the university bought our beloved FISI house and turned it into an alumni house, not our FISI house, not the place where it is that we become attached to our beloved fraternity. And then the pledges from my brothers at that collection of brothers, those who I served as pledge master over, and those who I served in the class being rushed and pledged with, they were no longer going to give to Wittenberg University. Just weren't going to do it. They weren't going to do it because this was this was blasphemy to take away our FISI house where our memories were. I was on the board of directors at Wittenberg at the same time. So guess who became the target? And I've often been called a pioneer, and I said I'd rather be a settler. You know, the pioneers with the arrow in the back, face down. I'd rather be one that got a little piece of the land at some point in my career. But I persuaded them that something about FISI went deeper than that FISI house. Had long conversations about it. They were mad. Irate would even be an understatement. They weren't going to give anything else to that university who took away their beloved FISI house. When I started talking about brotherhood, being together, our fellowship, our fun crawls that we would have, even as older adults or young adults, Bill, we would do our bar hopping crawls and our concert crawls, and we would always end up on the porch of that beloved FISI house. Didn't belong to us anymore. But what did belong to us and will never be able to go is the brotherhood that was bound within it. They began to slowly begin to recover from that and give more and be associated with mentoring of the students that took over a different place, but still Phi Psi notwithstanding all of that. So that's what I meant by that, Ben, that it goes beyond bricks and mortar. It goes beyond even the human frame. It's what is within us as brothers and how it is we share that bond with one another. Through like experiences and many times different experiences, but adverse experiences for all of us. And how do we mend those things and weave those things together in our loom of brotherhood and friendship?
Well, Randall and Bill, you mentioned in your introduction some of the joy about watching others and leading others to volunteerism. And so I'm interested from your perspective, one, why is it important to volunteer? You know, a lot of folks just ask that question in general. And then two, what benefits do the volunteers receive from giving of their time to a cause?
Yeah, I mean, you volunteer because you really feel like you're doing something that would otherwise not be done if you weren't there. And so, you know, kind of looking at it from the perspective of if I don't do this, you know, it's not going to happen for this person, or, you know, so you know, I want to kind of share that from a couple of perspectives. Of one, when I was an undergrad, as you know, part of the colony when we were first starting, you know, we were going and helping with Boys and Girls Club and helping, you know, teach children basketball and teach children sports and stuff. And I'm, you know, was part of sports my entire life, and I know what impact that had. So knowing that, you know, you were able to provide something like that for somebody that, from your perspective, right, it all comes from internal to come out, and how you want to see that done, especially when you're kind of impacting somebody so young. And then kind of transitioning into, you know, with Reach Out Worldwide is, you know, you're helping somebody who didn't do anything to be in that situation other than live somewhere that something came through. So, you know, they've, although, you know, you can do whatever you need to do to protect your house. I mean, Mother Nature is Mother Nature. She's going to do whatever she wants to do. So, you know, really being able to be there for somebody and see that look on their face of they really, really need you in that moment. And otherwise they wouldn't have gotten any help, or they'd be, you know, waiting on national type help, you know, and agency help for months. And typically that's just going to be financial. So going in there and, you know, getting your hands dirty and literally helping somebody, knowing that they probably physically couldn't even have done that on their own, really feels good. So it, you know, it definitely comes from a place where you just, you know that it's needed. And, you know, you kind of figure out too, by the end of it, that it's helping you more than it's, I shouldn't say more than it's helping them, but you take that pride in knowing you did that, and you leave there, you know, and you start to look around the people on the street as you walk by, and you're like, man, you know, I just did something so good. And, you know, it's kind of like putting that goodwill out there, and doing good for other people is so, you know, is so self-rewarding. And there's this, you know, feeling of being grateful almost for yourself for doing that. Taking time, you know, the most important thing we all have, the thing that, you know, you can never go back on, but you can always go forward with and change. So being able to give your time to somebody else is so internally rewarding, on top of being able to see physical work being done for somebody to help them too.
I often have heard that from a number of our undergraduate chapters and brothers, when they do volunteer, that they actually get more out of the experience than they believe that they gave to the experience. And so I'm sure, Bill, you've probably heard that several times over in your years as a chapter advisor. But, you know, same question to you. Why is it important for individuals, you know, undergraduates and alumni alike, to volunteer? And then what do they get from that experience?
Well, I mean, I kind of echo what Randall said. You know, at the undergraduate level, you have some students who just are natural volunteers, and others not so much. Maybe it's because of their home backgrounds, whatever. But if they, as a group, do things, then maybe they all get a little bit more enthused about what they're doing, how they're helping people, and you really do. Yes, you help the other person, but you help yourself too. You really do. If you're feeling sorry for yourself, go help someone who's in a worse position, and you won't feel so sorry for yourself. So the giver is the one who's really getting as much or more than the receiver. So yeah.
It's interesting
Yeah,
you should say that I'm sorry, Randall.
I was going to say that's totally true. If you want to feel better about yourself, go stand, at a donation center and pass out socks to somebody, and you'll start to feel pretty grateful.
I was led to think that about that, Randall, about something you said earlier in your initial presentation is that we're not afraid to get our hands dirty. We're not afraid to go out and specifically do the task. It may be okay in philanthropy to write a check and say, check that box. I've done what I can do and I've helped people and others. But it's more important is if you face it on and you feel it and you understand where the need and perhaps hurt and desire to do better. And it's there when I was in a panel discussion talking about the exploitation of baseball players in the banana fields of the Caribbean and South America, and were they being exploited by Major League Baseball? I said, well, it depends on your perspective. Some of them, a banana a day was better than no bananas a day in terms of being able to get their start in baseball. But getting down to the brass tacks where it hits. I was very impressed by that, Randall, and encourage you and others like you, probably no one else quite like you, but have them continue to press forward and get their hands dirty. That's how it is you have ultimate cleansing.
Right. I read a book a number of years ago, and I apologize, I forget the title, but they researched individuals who gave of their time and their money, so philanthropists and tremendous volunteers. And what they found out is across the board, they lived both happier and longer lives. So I always tell folks that the reason that you should volunteer is because you're going to be a happier person that lives much longer, as a sort of a baseline idea. But, as I think about volunteerism and I think about the world that we're in and the fact that the four of us are connecting today virtually, the world has dramatically changed for us over the last 12 to 18 months. And so has philanthropy and volunteerism. And so I'm interested to hear from the three of you how you think, one, that has changed philanthropy and volunteerism today, and how you believe that may change philanthropy and volunteerism for tomorrow.
Well, Ben, one thing, our COVID has curtailed some of the things that our students do on a regular basis. But there's always ways to help. There was an organization which I had not heard of until this fall, but that our students were involved with. It's called 7 Cups, and it's a website where if someone's feeling really depressed, really under distress, they can connect through this website, and it will be connected to someone who will listen. And so several of our guys got trained to be listeners and to be active listeners. And it's all confidential. Nobody knows anybody's name, and they just talk. And that's, that could be done whether they had COVID or not. But I don't think they would have found that had it not been for COVID. They were searching for some way to do things, and they didn't involve touching and breathing on people. And so that's one way that they could get involved virtually.
That's
Yeah, I
great.
think one thing that it's done too is it's definitely increased the level of selflessness that would go into volunteering, simply because for a while there, in some states, probably still today, even leaving your house is a risk. So if you're gonna go out and give your time to do something, there's that, that immediate and intended purpose that you want to go help somebody. So I think, there's that bit of, I mean to do this. I want to do this. I'm not doing this because, I need to log some hours, or this is something I told myself I do at the beginning of the year. Like, you're actively really going out there to try to do it. yeah, it's definitely taken everybody kind of getting a little bit creative on how to continue that, I think, from a personal level as well.
I don't ever want to overstate the importance of philanthropy, notwithstanding the mechanism or the means, but clearly these days people don't have the means. Uh-oh, mistake. They have means to do a lot more than just money. They have the means to help feed someone, and those who the stories of those who are in food lines who never ever thought that they'd experience it. The first thing they do once they've regained employment or figured out a way is they go right back to that food line, and they're on the other side of the line. And a story that I had is because I don't believe in these philanthropic awards and things, but I got a call one day from the head of the National Black Philanthropic Group out of Washington, D.C. and said, Mr. Thompson, you've been nominated by the School of Philanthropy here and School of Philanthropy there to be the National Black Business Philanthropist of the Year. And I said, don't call me. No, I'm not interested. Don't call me. Then I get a call back about 3 months later and said, Mr. Thompson, you're in a finalist. A finalist for what? Well, they think that you're going to be the Black Business Philanthropist of the Year for the United States. I said, don't call me. I don't believe in that. I just don't want to do it. And then I said, well, don't you know that Oprah Winfrey and at the time Bill Cosby, more infame, but famous at infame. I said, well, they got money. I don't have any money. So when I've made money, I've given it away. So that doesn't register. I don't want to do that. They said, no. Well, would you consider it? I said, just leave me alone. They called me back 3 months later and said, Mr. Thompson, we're here to tell you that you won this award. I won what award? The one for the National Black Business Philanthropy. Otherwise, I said, I don't want that award. They said, well, can we talk you into it? Just so that you can be an example to others about what giving and philanthropy means. I said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, I said, okay, here's my criteria for accepting your award. Number one, it's got to be at a place and time where it is I can be. If it's in DC or New York or LA and it's against my schedule, that won't work. Two, it has to be at a place where it is my daughter, who was in college at the time, and she was at Pepperdine out on the West Coast, and that she could be able to be there, because I believe philanthropy can be taught. Something that if you witness it and you talk it, I want to be there. And then I says, thirdly, you can't censor what I say when we arrange it. So ultimately, they arranged it for me to have that, and my daughter was there. And my daughter grew up as a daughter of two lawyers, one a judge, the other, and always thought that she was coddled and spoiled. And I'd taken her to private school. I'd go down to places where there were boarded up places and she wouldn't see them. But notwithstanding all of that, I thought that if she were to listen and really feel philanthropy, that she could probably do that. So I made sure she was there at all these deals around receiving these awards and listen, and I gave my speech. Well, I'm not sure if it registered to her until about 10 years ago, when she found herself on a gurney giving her kidney to her cousin, my nephew. She said, Dad, I'm not doing this out of fear. I'm doing this out of love. My only child on a gurney, taking a healthy body part out and giving it to someone else. She got philanthropy much more so than I have or ever will. So it's how much you're willing to give of yourself to the comfort and aid of others. Is it a kidney? Is it your life? Is it your livelihood? Is it your convenience? If it's only your convenience, I suggest that you've got more to give, and you should give it. And it doesn't mean money. You can't quantify some of those things that are really meaningful and with the spiritual underpinnings of our founding.
Right. Well, Milt, you had mentioned the love and the desire to give back that your daughter expressed, and we know that the love of humanity is really the underpinning or the definition of philanthropy. And there's always that moment, as we talk about volunteer experiences throughout one's life, where perhaps you had that most memorable volunteer experience, or you've helped lead someone else to a memorable volunteer experience. And so I'm interested to hear from the three of you about a personal moment of either, your own volunteering or leading others to volunteerism where you just felt that love for humanity?
I can start off. What we've kind of noticed is oftentimes our donors are the people that don't have much to begin with. I shouldn't say oftentimes, but the stories that resonate with us are the ones where, you hear about why they donate, and they give you a story about their life, and then you start to, kind of put these stories together, and you realize that, as Milt mentioned, it's you were once the person that was receiving some sort of help from somebody, and now you're giving back. So, to know that there's so much more than we can do, than just giving money or even just giving time. There's so much more we can do. And then to hear firsthand how, 2 months ago they were living in their car, and now we did like a fundraiser or something where they won like a gift. We did like a raffle type of thing, and they won something, and they tell you a story about how, hey, that $5 that I donated was, I had maybe 25 bucks left, and I wanted to donate because I told myself I was always going to support because I was supported. And those types of things are what kind of restores your faith in humanity when you come to realize that it's oftentimes the people that had received help that are willing to give back. And I think that it definitely takes some deliberate work on our part if we hadn't received that type of help to go out there and give that kind of help. But I think, looking at it from their perspective, it really just makes you kind of sit back and remember why you do what you do, and why you feel so good doing it. Even to let them know that you hear them and that you appreciate it, and that, there's that little bit of understanding that you have of what they've gone through, and that they got to share their story with you. Even that, goes a long way for them too.
Ben, I don't know if I can point to any one, incident to answer
There's
your
just
question.
too many, Bill.
Pardon me?
There's just too many.
Well, I don't know about that, but when I got re-involved with FISI, I thought, why am I doing this really? Because there's plenty of fraternities at Iowa State, and maybe they don't need one more. But I just had this feeling I wanted to do it, and we wanted to do it right. Because I've always felt if you run fraternity right, it can be one of the best experiences on a college in your college career. And so we've tried to run it right. Nothing's ever perfect, but we've tried that. And so over the years, we've gotten so many emails or letters from parents or brothers, or just listening to graduating seniors in their final farewell at their final chapter meeting talk about how important it's been to them, and shed tears and all of that. So just when you wonder why are you doing this, and is it helping anybody, you do have those moments where you realize this is helping somebody. And I often joke there isn't a single undergraduate that I didn't want to wring his neck at least at one time, in his 4-year career. But a lot of guys turned out pretty darn good. And it's like Milt in a story about he didn't know if his daughter was getting the message, but she got it. But he didn't realize she got it until several years later. And so we experienced a lot of that.
I too have some experiences. It's hard to pick out one, but I'll pick out two real quick. The first is a follow-up to my daughter. Not only did she take that experience, she turned it into her career and her livelihood. She got her law degree, and she has her PhD in public health care policy, and is in the surgery department at Johns Hopkins. She is at the ground level of transplant research for the entire world at age 36. Couldn't be more proud, but her whole life is about giving back to others and making sure that people have the lifeblood of transplantation. And my second example is, you probably read in my resume that back in the day, I was on board chair of Big Brothers organization here in Indy, and spent a lot of time doing those sort of things. And they were really resistant against a merger between Big Brothers and Big Sisters because they culturally didn't grow up the same way. And we were the largest city in the country without a merged organization. I went there for a 4-year kind of an engagement to check it out. 2 years later, we were big brothers and big sisters of Central Indiana because we decided we would listen. I had 2 little brothers, both of them named Glenn because they were really scared that I wouldn't remember one little brother from the next in terms of just what their names were. But my first little brother, Glenn, couldn't even do a pull-up when I first met him. Ironically, I've been in touch with him recently. He ended up being on a submarine in the Coast Guard. And he was also an engineer when I didn't know that he would even survive or exist. All that short and steady stuff is great, but he ended up with a chronic disease, and I put my daughter in touch with him because it was about a kidney. He's still on dialysis. I'm not sure where that's going. But what it caused was significant that he just recently had to have his leg amputated, and he's got a prosthetic. So he gives me a call, not to talk about his prosthetic, but to check on me and how I'm doing during this pandemic.
Wow.
I mean, are you serious? I don't know what I would do hobbling around, although I hobble around with my own prosthetics. They're internal. They're not ones that other people can actually see and notice. But to think that he was not concerned about his own maladies, going to dialysis and to hobble around with this new prosthetic leg, he's worried about me.
Very selfless.
You tell me that's not a learning or a tearjerker, then you're not understanding what giving to others really means. That man's giving back.
That's great. And he's apparently very grateful for all you've given back to him. That's very evident.
Whew.
Well, we have a number of, as you can imagine, undergraduates and particularly young alumni in the fraternity that are always looking to give back. But sometimes there's a little bit of caution because they may think they don't have enough experience to volunteer. And so if you were to hear that from someone to say, well, I don't have the experience you have, Milt, or Bill, I don't have the experience you do, or Randall, I certainly can't just jump in somewhere and do something. I'm not a first responder. I don't have the experience. What would you say to those individuals? And perhaps what are some easy ways that they can just get involved in volunteering?
Just raise your hand. Yeah. Because there's a lot of places out there that could use help. I mean, in this county, it's a small county, but you can just go to the United Way website and you'll see all kinds of organizations that could use help. You can go to the Story County Volunteers website and they have these things that, they need this for this day and that for that day. I mean, people need to pick something they have an interest in, they like. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to volunteer. And so it ought to be fun. It ought to be rewarding. And I think each person just kind of needs to find their own level, their own interest.
We've seen a lot of charitable groups that have started to engage donors and fans in virtual ways over the last 10 or 12 months. And Randall, this is probably something, we'll throw this question to you to start off with because of your background in marketing and production. But what are some of the unique ways and interesting ways you've seen charitable organizations engage their volunteers and donor base?
Yeah, it's, as I kind of said earlier, we've kind of had to pivot quite a bit. And there's a few different organizations that we work hand in hand with. And so we kind of ask them, and there's obviously the PR perspective of it. There's some really cool software that you can use where you can just, really save a lot of time focusing more on a specific location that you want to hit with PR and almost act like your own PR agent. But, then there's the virtual thing that everybody's doing that we've absolutely jumped in. We have a really big presence on social media as well, where, we're very active on it. We do a lot of our updates there. We do a newsletter as well. But over the past, I want to even say like 8 months, we've held 2 or 3 different live streams that have been fundraising live streams that have been targeted towards a certain goal of fundraising where we'll raise money live. And as we hit different goals, we'll do something fun or something goofy just to keep it lighthearted. But they're always kind of stemmed around certain dates that mean something. So in the nonprofit world, there's obviously Giving Tuesday in December. And so we did a big one there. Earlier in the year, we had done one right around, certain, kind of birthdays and celebratory things inside the organization. So those have worked out well. We've done other things that have been big mega productions, but this is, years and years and years ago that, we would get very, very large partners and budgets and studios and everything like that. And it's been we've kind of laughed about how we haven't replicated that, don't get me wrong, but we've done a decent job at trying to replicate those big fundraisers with a couple Amazon phone stands, that hold our phones up and we go live on Instagram or live on Facebook and, just engage with people, shout out their countries that they're from, that they're supporting us from. So it has absolutely been taken into a virtual perspective, simply, because going somewhere where we used to pop up a canopy or, go visit an event and represent Reach Out Worldwide or something, just it's not around anymore. You can't really see people that way. So, going virtual with it and doing it more consistently and having more fun with it has definitely been an interesting and fun endeavor, because we're always, skating really, really, always pivoting and moving. So it's a lot of fun to do that and then have our supporters back us on it. It has been really cool, obviously, just knowing that they're there to support us while we're trying to figure out how to navigate all this.
Great. We've certainly seen a lot of charitable entities either become agile or increase their flexibility and connection with others. Milt or Bill, ways that you're seeing charitable groups either engage with you or that you're helping lead other groups engage with donors or volunteers?
First of all, Ben, I wanted to go back to your former question about what you tell undergraduates that say they may lack the experience, and my answer is BS. I've never known a Phi to just kind of dabble their toes in the water. We're more likely to dive in without water in it. We're just worried about dabbling in. So culturally, I think that we're okay to go without experience to say, as Bill suggests, there's a need there, find where that need is. And if that's dogs, go to it and do it with passion. And if it's helping people around the world to move trees out of their way, by all means, you have the skill enough to roll up your hands, get dirty to do that. So I would tell them that's nonsense if they believe that experience becomes their checkmate. To your other question, I had a news crew here interviewing me yesterday about Black History Month and the degree to which I had some sort of influence over others in the family business and how it was rooted here. I've been on 5 podcasts as guests of others to talk about what's going on. We're doing this right here by Zoom. I've learned more about Zoom and also about Microsoft Teams because I'm on the Hoosier Lottery Commission, and they won't allow Zoom because it could be impacted or not firewalled, and so you got to learn Microsoft Teams. For someone who learned that pushing a button was the vehicle for technology, I've been forced to have to adjust. So I'm able to practice law this is one of my 2 offices in my home. I think I've been to my law office in five times since March. Still being able to be productive and still being able to work with all of my nonprofit organizations and have meetings that are virtual. And you can do them all well through the evening time, notwithstanding time zones. So I think technology, as much as sometimes I loathe it, it has been a part of creating opportunities to move forward with your philanthropy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just in our case, involvement with alumni, the Zoom concept has really opened that up. Our chapter has not done a very good job of bringing back alumni to speak to students about career opportunities. A lot of it just because of the logistics, and because everybody leaves Ames when they graduate, so they're a long ways away. So what we're trying to do now this semester is set up every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, a different Zoom call, if you will, with 2 or 3 alumni and students that are interested about different things. Maybe it's careers in chemical engineering. Maybe it's what's it like to live in downtown Chicago. I mean, all kinds of things. And we hope that some of these events will have several people, sometimes maybe only 2 or 3 people, but it's an easy way to connect that we really didn't have before. Maybe we had it before, we just didn't think about it.
Yeah, I think to your earlier point, Randall, we may not have taken advantage of what was right in front of us, right, to that extent, and now we're kind of forced to do that, and it's opened up kind of a whole new paradigm of thinking of how we interact or how we volunteer, or how we contribute. And I've just been amazed at the number of chapters that have taken that to heart. And to your point earlier, Bill, they've gotten more creative about the groups that they're volunteering for, the ways in which they're volunteering, and the methods by which they're deploying that. And so the number of, chapters and brothers that, if we think all the way back to perhaps March and April last year, that had started creating and making masks, that were running food drives and food pantries for the last 18 months for areas not only in their community near their college, but also near their home. The number of chapters that have organized handwritten thank you cards and letter writing campaigns for first responders and the folks that have gone out there to support those individuals. It's just been incredible to be a part of that and see the number of undergraduates that have been creative in that fashion, and the number of alumni that have pivoted, I think, both their industries and their businesses to help others out. And as we think about that, I think it's interesting in the current environment that we're in, that we're seeing a lot more companies invest in philanthropy, community service, to encourage their employees to volunteer and contribute. Is there anything that you would say to folks that perhaps are in leadership roles in corporations, how they can have an impact on the folks that work for them and around them?
First of all, our words matter. To the degree to which we speak truth, others will follow. And that's not a political statement these days, although some might interpret it to be that. But the truth will set you free. And I think that's the underpinnings of what it is our spiritual foundings were also about. So if you're going to talk to others about doing something for others, you may as well have a good basis in fact and in truth to do that. And by that, words do matter. How you say it, what you say it, who is the messenger for how it's said. Give you a real quick illustration. I speak twice a year to the immersion of Indianapolis of middle manager leaders here, and I talk to them. My part is about the sports history and the infrastructure and the sports economics about it. And what they do is that before they go talk to the government sector and the philanthropic sector and the private business sector and the corporate sector and all the business people that have something to shape what it is our community, they have this 30 plus class folks. And what they do is they give them all the resumes of all the speakers that they're going to see for the entire few days. And they tell them that you're going to be assigned 5 minutes before the introduction someone to introduce. So there's a young man who worked for Cummins Middle, and I won't say any more of that in terms of embarrassment, but as we're ready to do our deal right down there at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, he comes up to me, Mr. Thompson, I've been chosen to do your introduction. I go, fine. You received the resume a few days ago. He goes, yeah, but that doesn't help me. I said, what do you mean it doesn't help you? It's a resume. He goes, it goes on for page after page after page after page. I don't know what to say or do about it. I said, well, just slow down, relax. It's going to be okay. Trust me, it's just an introduction. Okay, this is not going to be that complicated. Says, anything jump off of the page at you? He goes, yes. Says, well, my God, you did the community foundation and you're National Black Business Philanthropist and you do all this. You're a philanthropist. I said, you sure about that? He says, yeah, you're a philanthropist. I said, well, that's great. You feel good with that? Then you go with that. He says, is there anything else that jumped off the page? He goes, yes. I mean, you've done television shows and radio shows and you do lecture circuits and you do graduation programs and you're known as one of the most eloquent men in Indy. So that make me an elocutionist? Yes, you're a philanthropist and an elocutionist. I go, great, you feel good about those two things? He goes, absolutely, I feel good about it. Words matter, folks. He gets up there and says, my classmates, I have the greatest honor of our entire 2 days here to introduce you to Milt Thompson, prominent attorney around here, and he is a fantastic philanthropist and an executionist. Really? May have had the thought. Is it truly in the execution that it is we have influence over others? So I would suggest that the bottom line is truth telling, making sure that those with whom they are getting advice express those things in clear and relevant terms, and that the message givers are reliable with great veracity and truthfulness. That's how it is you influence them in corporate worlds to be able to produce themselves. Don't lie to them in an interview. Tell the truth in an interview. People will prefer the truth than things that they find out later that are not true.
Well, Bill or Randall, any thoughts on, those FISIs, particularly those alumni members that are in corporate roles or own their own business or are in different levels of management, how they could have an influence on their organization culture related to philanthropy?
Yeah, there's a few different programs that they might be able to install into their culture in their company, as well as promote through, as Milt said, as doing it. So there can be match programs they can start. So if one of their employees decides, hey, I can't quite go and physically be there, but I want to donate a couple $100, there can be a way that corporation can match that. And now you've just doubled that. So there's that feeling of every dollar goes a little bit further. And in addition to that, giving your employees a type of program where they want to go volunteer somewhere, it might impact their PTO, but there's just that option to be able to say, hey, this is a little bit different than PTO. I'm going to go do something that's a little bit, selfless. It's volunteering. I'm going to go help this, and it might even be in their own community. A lot of times, from my perspective, I think of things with travel. So, we're always in different areas. So something that happens in Fultondale, Alabama, might not impact somebody that's up in Blue River, Oregon. So, there might be things where you have to travel to go to those, and it would be great if companies were able to support that level of giving, and by not necessarily saying, hey, anytime you guys need to go volunteer, go, but setting up a program where that can be something that happens, where it's encouraged and might even be supported by the corporation to help make a donation on their behalf on top of them, going and joining it as well. Maybe even encouraging other employees, hey, Randall's going to go and give his weekend out here and go help somebody. Does anybody want to donate $20? Let's go and send an email around the email chain, and one of our own is going to go do that. So just encouraging and showing that it's something that the company stands behind too.
And can I ask Bill a question?
Sure.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Bill, with your experiences now having some longevity over generation to generation, are the young men today fundamentally different than they were when, say, we were in school or earlier on? Or is there something about the generations that has changed them, or things that we maybe need to do better as a fraternity to help them?
Well, that's a good question. And, I don't know how many people have said to me, geez, how can you stand to, get in there and get your hands dirty with all these students, and the next generation is going to hell and all of that. I mean, I was in college when the Vietnam War was raging and the protests were raging. And my parents' generation, the greatest generation that fought the good war in World War II and were very loyal to the country and all of it, good stuff. They saw my generation just go to hell, they thought. Our hair was long, we dressed funny, and some people smoked dope. And they must have thought, well, this generation's beyond help. So I always keep that in mind. And, this has been going on since people were invented. I mean, the older people always think the younger generation just doesn't have it together. But I tell you, one thing that I noticed that's different, I think, fundamentally different, is students today young people today are just so much more tolerant of others, I think, than when I was there. Now, with the polarization in the country, maybe it doesn't seem like what I'm saying is right. But, when it comes to color of skin or religion or sexual preference, from what I see, it just doesn't matter. And I don't think that was the case 50 years ago. So I think that's good.
Thank
I
you.
like that.
Thank you. That's very observant. Thank you for that.
Just back to your question, Ben, about you were asking about what corporations and the corporate environment can do. I think really just any organization, to pick up on what Milt said, words matter, and they absolutely do, but actions matter too. So, whether it's raising your kids or leading a fraternity or leading AT&T, whatever, I'm reminded of the saying about your kids more attention paid to what you do than what you say. And I think that's absolutely true with any organization. So you gotta walk the walk.
There you go. Well, I'm pleased to say, we've done a lot of research over the last few years about what our brothers are doing in comparison to others, particularly those in higher ed and other fraternities. And we know that on average, Phi Psi alumni tend to volunteer for somewhere between 5 and 6 nonprofit organizations, which by and large tends to mean a higher investment of time with groups and a deeper investment of time than many of our other fraternal counterparts, and then the average individual that's graduating from an institution or a higher education. So there is definitely something about the Phi Psi experience that instills in itself the great joy of serving others. And as we wrap up here today, what I'd love to do is leave those folks that are joining us with some final comments from each of you relative to your advice on either ways or areas or specific organizations or resources of how individuals could get involved and start to volunteer if they want to.
I think it's been said here thus far is that the first thing is to find what you're interested in. And Bill had mentioned, if you're looking to be a part and do things for animal rights, or you're a humanitarian, or you want to go into the Forest Service or something like that, the first step is to figure out what it is that you're passionate about. Because if you're not passionate about it, it's going to be a one-time thing, and you're going to go, yeah, that was cool, I did that, that one time, and that was it. But if it's something that you truly want to see through and see a difference be made, that's the first step. And then really just making sure that you just raise your hand and say, hey, I'm here to help. I want to be a part of this. I believe in what you're doing. This is, this means a lot to me. I want to be able to see this through. And I think that you'd be very hard pressed to find an organization that says, thank you so much, but no, thank you. There's always going to be a way that you can help with very limited experience, or, one of the leaders. So, as we were starting with the colony, it really, we knew that we were going to have to invest a lot more time volunteering than, let's say, another Phi Psi chapter that was, years or decades into being, a chapter, or even other chapters on our campus, competing chapters. And so that being more or less instilled very early on, knowing that, hey, we've got this huge petition we've got to write, it's going to be 300 pages, 256 to be exact. And, we're going to need to put this together and show all the things that we've done. So that being instilled in us very early, and us having 13 initial founding fathers really kind of set the wave for, I like this, I want to keep doing this, and any way I can get involved in helping somebody, I want to do. So, that kind of has transitioned into a professional aspect for me, which I'm really grateful for. It feels really, really good to do it. So, being on this side of it, just reach out and let us know that we, you can be of help to us. We're actually, we've finalized an ambassador program. It's going to be a global ambassador program where we can have, subsequently little reach out worldwide ambassadors all over the world, where something happens, they keep us in the loop, and we can be even more responsive for those. So that could be a way that, for others that are interested in kind of the specialty work that we do, would like to kind of keep us in the loop and be involved in what we do. We don't know what's going on in Japan right now. We don't know what's going on in India right now, or Chile, or something like that. So being able to have that, those meetings, monthly or whatever that is, and keep a tab on what's going on, those are great ways for somebody to get involved as well.
Thanks, Randall. I really appreciate your encouragement for folks to find their passion and utilize that as they look for volunteerism. And I know Bill and Milt, you mentioned that earlier too. Any final thoughts, Bill or Milt, on areas or resources for folks to get involved today in volunteerism?
Well, I'll go second. As you probably know, Ben, FISI's turned out to be my number one thing in retirement. That's my hobby, my main hobby. But I will be the first to admit that I've struggled sometimes with, this is the best way to spend my time and my resources, my donations. I mean, surely there's other places, other needs that are more that are more in need. Maybe I have my emphasis all wrong. But then I keep going back to years ago when I visited Cabo in Jerry Nelson's place down there, and he used to put those programs on. There was somebody down there, and I can't remember if it was Jerry or one of the other speakers, who said, there's only 1% of the world's population that has a college degree. But we got a lot of problems, and if we're going to solve these problems, it's going to have to be the educated men and women of this world that take the lead. And I've never forgotten that. And then back to FISI, I came to the conclusion long ago that if you run a fraternity chapter right, it is the ultimate internship, because I don't know where else you can get on a daily basis to practice the skills of leadership. How to get along with people, how to motivate people, how to negotiate, how to compromise, how to set goals, group goals, individual goals, long-term, short-term. It's the ultimate internship. And if you screw up, well, you're not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose your spouse. I mean, it's a great training ground. And so I guess that's what keeps me motivated. If I can help provide a good environment for these guys and a good experience, then hopefully they can go out and solve a lot of the problems that need to be solved. It's a drop in the bucket, but that's what all any of us can do, really.
I couldn't agree with you more, Randall, nor you, Bill. You're both stellar examples of what is required after self-analysis, because in order to determine your passion, you've got to say, well, this is what I'm about and this is what I care about. And like you did self-analysis about, is this really important in this lane of the world relative to leadership? And would it matter more someplace else than it matters here? I would submit to both of you and to our larger audience that it's not after your self-analysis what you do in terms of quantitative deal. I think it's what you do in terms of a qualitative value add. If I were to go to Randall, I want to participate in your organization. And if I do my self-analysis and he says, well, we need 12 electricians on this job. And I would go, Randall, you're barking up the wrong tree, dude. I cannot do electrical work. I'm afraid of it. I will not help you. I would hinder you. However, he said, Milt, we've got this pact that is written in 2 different languages, and it has some impact upon what we're able to do with the local ordinance in terms of getting people there. Could you read that over? I'm much more able to figure that out even if I don't know the answer, because I've done my self-analysis and I know what my strengths are, but I also know what my weaknesses are. So once you do the self-analysis, where can you add something qualitative to the organization? And in Bill's case, it's leadership, to educated men of the FISIs, and a slice of their FISIs that will have impacts around the world. So it's not a matter of it being a small sample size. This is a great sample size, and you decided deliberately to have an impact there. Randall says, well, I don't know what the differences are going to be in Florida than it's going to be in Washington State. But I'm smart enough now to figure out where those gaps are and who to call to help in each of those areas, because I've got a network of people who are similarly attending to those kind of issues. So I say self-assessment, finding your passion, then find out where your passions meet with your skills and expertise to be able to offer a qualitative difference to those around you.
Well, I appreciate you all sharing and being with us today. I'd be remiss if I didn't encourage those who are with us today to consider volunteering with a local Phi-Sci chapter that they're connected with. And there's a number of different ways in which they can go about doing that, whether that be mentoring a particular brother or getting involved on a house corporation or alumni association or a chapter advisory team. There's lots of different ways that we can have a direct impact on Phi-Sci, and by virtue of that, the lives of the undergraduate men that will be the future leaders of tomorrow. And so I think there's no better way or better place for us to think about investing some of our time and expertise and our financial contribution. So with that, I thank you both, or all three of you, sorry, for being with us today and helping us celebrate what is an incredible Founders Day for all of us. So thanks so very much.
Thank you.